Let's watch this clip together.
You can never marry Eric. You can never, ever, ever, over my dead body. You can never marry Eric. So go on to most of where you will marry Paulo. The way you do your bed, that's how you will lie on top of it.
Mommy, I don't understand. What's going on?
Go need that way. You don't understand. You don't understand. Eh? After you spoil my life, you want your own life made better past my life. You want to enjoy better life past my life. Olaide can never. When I marry your father, Tibi, he pregnants me. And I marry him. The life that life give me, I manage it. I don't drag. It bend more. The way the bed stay, that's how I lie down on top of the bed. The place that life have put you, and where the life put you, Paulo's house.
No, Mommy.
That's the place.
No.
You don't want to go.
I don't want Paulo.
You don't want Paulo. But you open your leg for Paulo. Your father pregnant my born girl. He married me. You have gone and collect your own pregnant. You are born gay. So after you collect Paulo, after you are born the sides, you born bastard. You want to marry Eric so that your life can better. Olaide, Womi, go there, Bomi Dada. Your life can never better more than my life.
Mommy, please.
Your life can never, ever. Ọlọ́run tí ẹ ní jẹ́. Ọlọ́run ní jẹ́. You can never have better life past the life that I am like this. Can never better pass me. You hear me? Bommy. Bommy. Anything I say now, you say it. Do you hear me? Now, as I say, I can never better pass my mother.
Mommy, please now. Mommy, please. Mommy, please. Mommy.
Say the thing that I say. Olaide, wá sọ pé I can never better pass my mother.
I can never be better than my mother.
Instead for your life to better, you will go down past your mother.
Instead for my life to be better, I will go down more than my mother.
You do not deserve good thing. Olaide, bí mo ṣe sọ ni kó máa sọ.
At first, I thought I was watching a story about a mother who hated her daughter. But the more I watched, the more I realized I was watching something far more dangerous. I wasn't watching hatred. I was watching unhealed pain. And I think that's an important distinction because not everyone with unhealed pain becomes abusive. But when pain is left untreated for years, it rarely stays contained. It leaks. It changes the way we see ourselves. It changes the way we see other people. And sometimes, right, it changes the way we love. As the film unfolded, I learned that years before, this mother had become pregnant unexpectedly. She tried to terminate the pregnancy, but she couldn't. She eventually married the baby's father. From everything the film showed us, her husband wasn't a bad man. He loved her. He worked hard. He supported her. He even apologized for how everything had happened. She never forgave herself. She never processed the shame. She never grieved the life she thought that she had lost. Instead, she carried that pain into every new season of her life, into her marriage, into motherhood, into the way she looked at her daughter, until one day she could no longer separate the child from the pain. Every time she looked at her daughter, she wasn't just seeing her daughter. No, she was seeing the day her own life changed. And that was when I realized this isn't really a story about a mother and daughter. It's a story about what happens when healing never takes place. Because you see, pain doesn't always disappear with time. Sometimes it simply waits for someone else to carry it. And that's what I want to talk about today. Before we go any further, I want you to think about something, right? If you fell over today and caught your arm, what would you do? You'd probably clean the wound, right? You might apply some sort of antiseptic. You'd cover it with a dressing. I'm guessing you keep an eye on it to make sure it was healing properly. Why would you do that? Because you understand something that many of us forget when it comes to emotional pain. A wound doesn't become dangerous, right? Simply because it exists. It becomes dangerous when it is ignored. If that wound is never cleaned, bacteria can get in. It becomes infected. The infection spreads into healthy tissue. Now, in severe cases, doctors don't amputate because of the original cut. No, they amputate because of what the untreated infection has done. Now, as I watched this movie, I couldn't stop thinking about that because the mother's unexpected pregnancy wasn't what destroyed her relationship with her daughter. The untreated wound did. The pregnancy happened once, but she relived it every single day. She carried it into her marriage. She carried it into motherhood. She definitely carried it into ordinary conversations. She carried it into the way she looked at her own daughter until eventually the person who had never caused the wound became the person carrying its consequences. Now, that is what unhealed pain does. It rarely stays where it started. It spreads. And here's something I want us to be really careful about. I am not saying everyone with unresolved pain becomes abusive. Not at all. Many people experience deep trauma and work incredibly hard to ensure it ends with them. But this film shows us what can happen when pain is never acknowledged, never grieved, and never healed. It doesn't stay frozen in time. No, it begins to influence the way you interpret the people around you. You stop seeing people as they are and you start seeing them through the lens of your wound. And now that is exactly what happened here. The daughter wasn't just a daughter anymore. She became a reminder of the pregnancy, a reminder of the shame, a reminder of the life her mother believed had been snatched from her. And when someone becomes a reminder instead of a person, the relationship begins to change. You stop responding to who they are, you respond to what they represent. That was the tragedy of this story. The daughter didn't create the mother's pain, she simply reminded her of it. Now, here's the part that really made me stop and think. The mother and father experienced the same unexpected pregnancy, the same marriage, the same beginning, yet they ended up as two completely different people in two completely different places emotionally. The father looked at his daughter and said, "My daughter deserves better." The mother looked at the same daughter and said, "You can never be better than me." Same event, different responses. And I know you say, well, the woman carried the baby, but it tells us something incredibly important. Pain may be inevitable, but passing it on is not. The same life event can make one person more compassionate and another more bitter. The difference is often found in whether the wound was faced or buried, because buried wounds don't disappear, they wait. And sooner or later, they begin looking for somewhere else to live. Which brings me to a sentence I don't think I'll ever forget from this thing, right? Pain that isn't processed doesn't disappear, it changes address. In this story, it moved from the mother's heart into her daughter's identity. And that is where the deepest damage began. There was one line in that film that stayed with me long after it ended. When the mother looked at her daughter and said to her, "I'm looking at the report card of my failure." The first time I heard it, I thought, what a horrible thing to say. But then I watched it again and I realized something, right? She wasn't really describing her daughter, she was describing herself. Think about what a report card does. A report card doesn't tell you who the child is, it tells you how someone believes they have performed. So when this mother said, "You are the report card of my failure," what she was really saying was, every time I look at you, I'm reminded of everything I believe I lost. That is psychologically significant because this is what we call projection. Projection is simply when feelings we cannot tolerate within ourselves are unconsciously placed onto someone else. Notice what happened in this story, right? The daughter didn't create the shame. The daughter didn't choose how she was conceived. The daughter didn't force her mother into that relationship. Yet, somehow, she became responsible for carrying emotions that never belonged to her. And here's the danger with projection. The person carrying it often starts believing it. Because that's exactly what happened to Olaide. After years of hearing, "You don't deserve good things. You can never be better than me. Your life will be worse than mine," she eventually found herself in that abusive relationship. Now, some people watching this movie, of this film, might conclude she made poor choices. And I don't think that's the full story. Yes, she did make wrong choices. Because if your earliest experience teaches you that love comes with rejection, that your needs don't matter, that your voice doesn't matter, that you don't deserve better, then when someone later treats you badly, it doesn't always feel unfamiliar. Sometimes it feels like home. Sad, but true. Now, that's one of the saddest consequences of childhood emotional wounds. We don't always choose what is healthy. We often choose what feels familiar. And familiarity can be incredibly deceptive because familiar doesn't always mean safe. Sometimes it simply means I've survived this before. And that's why healing is about much more than leaving unhealthy people. It's about teaching your mind and your nervous system that peace is no longer something to be suspicious of. Now, let me say something that might surprise you, right? I don't actually think this mother hated her daughter. I think she hated what her daughter represented. Every time she looked at Olaide, she saw the life she believed she had lost, the shame she never processed, the dreams that she buried, the younger version of herself that she never grieved. And instead of mourning that younger woman, she attacked the living reminder of her. There's a sentence I wrote down while reflecting on this movie, right? And I want you to really think about it. And it's when someone hasn't processed their pain, they often confuse the reminder of the pain with the cause of the pain. I'll say that again so you can have it in your head. When someone has not processed their pain, they will often confuse the reminder of the pain with the cause of the pain. These two things are not the same. The daughter reminded her of the pain. She did not create it. And I wonder how many relationships quietly fall apart because people are fighting reminders instead of healing the original wound. How many marriages? How many friendships? How many relationships between parents and children? How many workplaces? How many churches? How many families? Where people are not responding to the person standing in front of them, but instead they are responding to an old wound that was never given the chance to heal. That for me was the real tragedy of this story. Not that the mother had experienced pain, but that she allowed pain to decide who her daughter was to her. And when pain starts defining another person's identity, everyone loses. There was another moment in the film that I found deeply unsettling. It wasn't when the mother shouted. It wasn't even when she said, "I hate you." It was when she looked at her daughter and said, "Repeat after me. I can never be better than my mother. Repeat after me. I don't deserve good things. Repeat after me. My life will be worse than my mother's." That moment gave me chills because she wasn't simply insulting her daughter, she was trying to get her daughter to participate in her own identity. Think about that for a second. She wasn't just speaking to her daughter, she was trying to change the way the daughter would eventually speak to herself. If you're a Christian, you understand how powerful that is. And that is where emotional abuse often becomes most damaging because eventually the parent doesn't need to be in the room anymore. There's power in the tongue. Their voice becomes your inner voice. You hear it every time you want to apply for that promotion. Every time someone genuinely loves you, you hear it. Every time an opportunity comes your way, you hear that voice. Every time you think you're about starting something good, you hear it. Every time you begin to dream a little bigger, that voice quietly whispers, "Who do you think you are? People like you don't have lives like that. Don't get your hopes up high. You will only fail." And you see, this is one of the reasons why childhood messages are so powerful. Children don't just listen to what parents say, they build beliefs around those words. In transactional analysis, we talk about something called a life script, right? And a life script is an unconscious plan that begins to form in childhood, not because a child sits down and decides what kind of adult they want to become, but because they are constantly making sense of the messages they receive about themselves, other people, and around the world. If a child repeatedly hears, "You're loved, you matter, your voice is valid," that becomes part of how they see themselves. But if they repeatedly hear words like, "You are a burden, you're a waste of space, you will never succeed, you're disturbing me, you don't deserve good things," those messages don't simply disappear because the child grows older. Many adults are still living according to scripts that were written before they were old enough to question them. And here's what makes this story so heartbreaking. The mother wasn't just trying to control her daughter's present, like her present life. She was trying to write her daughter's future. Every time she said, "Repeat after me," she was handing her daughter a script and saying, "This is the life you will live." But here's the beautiful part of the story: the script was not permanent because something changed. The daughter eventually reached a point where she said, "No," not to her mother, but to the script. She refused to believe that abuse was all that she deserved. She refused to believe that another woman's bitterness had the right to determine her future. She refused to believe that because her mother's life had been painful, hers had to be as well. And that is one of the most hopeful moments in the entire film because it reminds us that although many of us inherit scripts, we are not condemned to perform them forever. There comes a point where every adult has to ask themselves, whose voice have I been living by? Is this really my belief? Or is it a sentence that someone else handed to me years ago? Because not every thought in your mind originated with you. Some fears were inherited, some shame was inherited, some limitations were inherited. You see, healing often begins the moment you recognize this difference. As I watched the ending of the film, something else stood out to me. The daughter eventually left. She built a business. She found a healthy relationship. She got married. She had her daughter, right? She was creating the life her mother had always told her she would never have. And then, 2 years later, she returned home with her husband. And I remember thinking, oh, maybe this is the moment that everything changes, the hugs, the cuddles, the apologies. Maybe the mother has softened. Maybe time has healed this relationship. Maybe she'll finally look at her daughter and say, I am sorry. But she didn't. She refused to speak to her. She walked straight past her own daughter. And I thought, how heartbreaking. Not because she was still angry, but because it showed us something we often misunderstand. Time doesn't heal people, not all the time. Healing actually heals people. You can spend 20 odd years avoiding your pain. You can decide, you will grow older. You can celebrate birthdays. You can watch your children become adults, become a grandparent, even move house, even move countries, change jobs, become successful, do whatever. Attend church every single Sunday, smile in photographs, yes, and still be emotionally trapped in the same wound that happened decades ago. Time measures distance. It does not automatically produce healing. Healing, you see, requires honesty. It requires grieving. It requires confronting the stories we've told ourselves. It requires asking difficult questions. What am I still carrying? Who am I still blaming? Who have I made responsible for my pain? And perhaps the hardest question of all, who is paying the price for the wounds that they never caused? Because that's what happened in this film. The daughter spent years paying interest on a debt she never borrowed. Think about that. She was trying to repay emotional debts that never belonged to her. And I wonder how many people are doing exactly the same thing, still trying to earn love they should never have had to earn, still trying to prove that they are enough, still trying to fix relationships they didn't break, still carrying shame that was handed to them by someone else's unresolved pain. Now, if that's you, I want you to hear me carefully. Someone else's inability to heal is not evidence that you are unworthy of healing. Someone else's bitterness is not proof that you deserve less. Someone else's disappointment is not your identity. And someone else's wound does not have to become your future. But I also want to speak to another group of people. Perhaps you are not the daughter in the story. Perhaps, if you're honest, you've recognized something of yourself in the mother. Not because you've said words as cruel as hers, but maybe because you've noticed that your unresolved pain sometimes leaks into your relationships. Maybe you've become overly critical. Maybe you struggle to celebrate other people's success. Maybe someone's joy quietly irritates you. Maybe your child's confidence feels disrespectful because nobody ever allowed you to be confident. Maybe your partner's emotional openness makes you uncomfortable because vulnerability was never safe when you were growing up. That doesn't make you a bad person, but it may be an invitation to ask, what wound is still asking to be healed? Because the reality is this: if pain remains unexamined, it rarely remains isolated. It finds its way into our words, our reactions, our parenting, our marriages, our friendships, even our silence. Now, the goal isn't to pretend we've never been wounded. The goal is to ensure that the people we love don't have to recover from us. That to me is what healing is really about. And as the credits rolled, I found myself thinking about one sentence, not one that was spoken in the film, one that formed in my mind as I watched it. And it's that pain that isn't processed does not disappear, it changes address. In this story, it moved from a mother's heart into her daughter's identity. But it didn't have to end there, because the most beautiful part of the film wasn't that the daughter got married. It wasn't that she built a business. It wasn't even that she found someone who genuinely loved her. The most beautiful part was the moment she decided, I deserve better. I need you to think about that. For years, she had been told, you don't deserve good things. She had been told that she would never be, better than her mother, that her life would be worse than her mother's. Those words had become part of the soundtrack of her life until one day she stopped believing them. That was the real victory, because healing doesn't begin when your circumstances change. Healing begins when the story you believe about yourself changes. And I wonder how many of us are still living inside stories that were never ours to carry. Stories that began with, you are too much, you are not enough, nobody will ever love you, people like us never succeed. Maybe those words were spoken over you. Maybe they were never spoken aloud, but they were communicated through rejection, criticism, or silence. Whatever their source is, here's what I want you to remember. Someone can hand you a script, but they cannot force you to keep performing that script. There comes a moment in every person's life when they have to decide. Will I continue living by the story that was written from someone else's pain? Or will I begin writing a different one? That doesn't mean pretending your childhood didn't hurt. It doesn't mean minimizing what happened. It doesn't mean excusing people who should have protected you. It means refusing to let their pain become the author of your future. And if, as you've watched this video, you've recognized something of yourself in the mother rather than the daughter, don't ignore that feeling. Don't defend it. Don't bury it. Be curious about it. Because recognizing a wound is not a sign of failure. It's often the first sign that healing has begun. One of the bravest things a person can say is, the pain the pain may have reached me, but it will not leave through me. That's how generational cycles end. Not with blame, not with revenge, but with one person choosing to heal what everyone else learned to hide. So I'll leave you with this question. What pain are you still carrying that someone else may already be carrying for you? Sit with that. Because sometimes the greatest gift you can give the people you love isn't more money. It isn't more advice. It isn't even more time. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give them is a healed version of yourself. If this video made you think differently about pain, healing, or the stories we inherit, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear which part stayed with you the most. And if this is a kind of psychology through storytelling that helps you understand yourself a little better, I'd love you to subscribe, because sometimes understanding why you do what you do is the first step towards becoming who you were always capable of being. Thank you for watching.